So we'll get started. So first of all, thank you for joining. My name is Dor. I'm the founder and CEO of Port. Actually, what got me into starting the webinar is something that we saw a lot in the market recently with our customers asking about the ability to measure the ROI of Copilot, which is an emerging question that we see a lot from both enterprise companies and mid-market companies. And just to give a bit of a background about myself, so in my background, I'm a developer with platform engineering experience. We've started Port 3 years ago. Some of the companies that we work with are companies like Visa, British Telecom, Verizon, and GitHub is actually one of Port's recent customers. So we are happy to do this webinar about GitHub Copilot. With us, Omri is our VP of Technical Success. Omri, can you present yourself in a few words?
Yes, sorry. And again, apologize. In a second, we will fix the camera thing. So I'm Omri. I'm coming also from the background of engineering and development. And in the last couple of in the last 10 years, I was focusing on delivering transformational services, helping organizations to change the way that they are developing and working with different kind of personas. And what is better than platform engineering as the future of this kind of transformation and maturity of engineering organization. So more than excited to be here. And in a second, so we'll see my face. I apologize, all about technicality. So 1 second, I will be.
No worries. Thank you, Omri. So let's get started. And so today we're going to cover how can you measure the GitHub Copilot ROI with an internal developer portal. So just to begin with, there is no doubt that Gen AI coding tools are widely adopted. I came across this visual a few weeks ago talking about the growth in revenues for Cursor, which is a Gen AI oriented IDE. And actually also for Port, we are using Cursor, we are using GitHub Copilot, and those tools are widely adopted and being purchased all across the globe as we speak. And basically, it's also a Gartner anticipation that by the end of 2028, 90% of enterprises will adopt AI coding assistance. So there is no doubt that the market is going towards enabling AI to help us write code and to move faster in the market. But Gen AI tools are not free. They require a significant investment. So just to take the latest pricing, transparent pricing of Cursor and Copilot would cost you anywhere between hundreds of Ks to even a few $1 million if you are an enterprise company. So Gen AI tools are a significant investment for companies. And yet it's very hard to demonstrate the value and the impact basically of Gen AI. So basically, this is a survey by Gartner that asked a wide range of organizations what is the most critical friction point for them when adopting AI tools, and it's estimating and demonstrating the value. So while there is no doubt that the organizations are going through a transformation around AI, not just in engineering, but in any other department, measuring and estimating the value is a big ask that we also see in the market, working with our customers that are asking us the same question. So today, hopefully, we can answer this question and giving you better visibility and understanding on how you should think about measurement, the value, and what does it mean, value for Gen AI. So of course, you want to make sure that you have the business understanding of the value. But another reason on why you want to measure the value is actually to make sure that from a strategic standpoint, your engineering is truly evolving into the AI era. So assume that you already purchased Cursor or Copilot, and I saw in the chat, in the poll that we ran, that most of you already have a quite significant, like more than 50% of the organization is using those tools. But you also want to make sure that they're using the tool, and you want to make sure that your engineering is marching toward the next era of coding, and from a cultural perspective, it's being adopted. Another reason on why you want to measure the Copilot ROI is to stay ahead of the challenges and risks that comes with adoption of Gen AI. So while Gen AI is all about productivity in many ways, but also it does not come free. It comes with risks that we need to understand and we need to measure to be able to adopt this type of technology in a responsible manner. Another insight that I found very interesting is the fact that by 2027, 25% of software defects will be caused by the lack of human oversight on Gen AI coding. And we'll talk a little bit more about it and what kind of risks are coming alongside with adopting such tools. So as mentioned, there are two ways to look at the measurement. The first one on the left is the positive one, is the productivity, is the time that you save, is the reduction of human errors, and this is one aspect of measurement that we'll talk about. And the second one on the right is, of course, the debt that you pay for adopting the tool, and you need to make sure that you stay on top of the debt when it comes to using Gen AI tools. Because basically, Gen AI means more code, and more code means more chaos in the most natural aspect. As time goes by, it becomes much easier to write code and to generate code. But when you write more code, you have more incidents, you have more bugs, you have more vulnerabilities. The architecture becomes more complex. It's easier to create microservices. It's easier to use cloud resources, and it's easier to move fast. But also, when you have more code, you also have to take into account all those aspects, which are an inevitable part of adopting Gen AI. So what we often see in the industry is that many companies think about measuring the usage of the Gen AI, which will help them understand the actual impact. But Gen AI usage measurement is not necessarily means business impact. To be able to measure Gen AI impact in a quality way, we need to correlate the usage of such metrics with actual metrics that can shed more light on the impact itself. To give one example, we highly recommend to measure the usage of the tool, but then to correlate it with the positive metrics like the time it takes to complete a task on Jira. So on the left here, you can see a graph that demonstrates what is the average time it takes to complete the task in Jira before and after using GitHub Copilot or Cursor. And then you can quantify the time you saved and estimate what would be the potential money saved for the company when using Gen AI tool. And by the way, Omri, feel free to chime in. You also work with at SNCC, so you worked with various engineering groups. So feel free to chime in.
So Zohar, I think it's a really interesting point. We're talking about the dimension of time, but if you also think about in the end of the day, as part of this analysis, is also to understand which team is using that, the Copilot, and which persona inside each team is the early adopter or the one that are maybe detractor or negative to that. Because to your point, I think that the metric that people need to look into. So you have the time. So we have two different dimensions. We have the time that stands for, in the end of the day, for money saving, but you also can do this investigation and try to think to see if you have specific teams that maybe, I don't know, from some reason culturally didn't adopt it, or maybe from seniority or experience. So if you think about it, when you get all this data into one place, you first of all can you can get and understand in the company level, but you also can go down to the vision level, teams level, and individual levels, and then try to understand where you as a leader can impact the adoption, or maybe starting to set the new kind of standards. And to your point, that's something that we cannot take out from this discussion. In the end of the day, developers are human beings, and we need to influence them, put sometimes a governance model, but also having the ability, as you're showing, to measure and show that, hey, team A, team B started to use it, and we saw that they're reducing the mean time to resolve a Jira ticket in 50%. So I think to your point, we see the time kind of aspect, but we should also see like the the individual and teams aspect as part of the investigation, because in the end of the day, you're paying for seats, and if they're not being utilized, you're also not getting the the view that the value that you're trying to achieve. So I don't know if it's a different dimension. We spoke about it. It's also something that
Absolutely.
we see in that case. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a lot about making sure that you promote a culture of adoption of such tools. I can show that at Port we have 2 developers that are not using the tool, and they prefer to write the code on their own, which is completely fine. But sometimes we need to see like how the culture around it is being developed. And to allow the developers to choose whether they're using it or not, and if they're using it, how they're using it, and to enable them around it and learn from other teams.
Amazing.
So basically, basically the other way to look at it is to correlate the usage with stability metrics. So I gave here one example into how you can correlate for example, the number of users, that active users in GitHub Copilot, which is available from the API, into the number of incidents and the number of bugs that you currently have. And what we often see actually is that sometimes, many times, there is a correlation, and not because GitHub Copilot necessarily writes that code, but this is just the nature of software. And we need to realize that, and we need to plan our sprint accordingly to understand that you also take into account those aspects. Another metric that I would think about incorporating into it is the actual MTTR, because sometimes to measure the MTTR compared to the adoption, because when code is being generated by Gen AI, sometimes developers lack the familiarity with the code. So that when you have an incident, sometimes it becomes harder to troubleshoot because you not necessarily know or remember the code because you didn't write it. And it's one more aspect that we need to take into account, the ability to manage incidents. And we will also show a little bit about the future and how we believe that this can be solved as well when you combine Gen AI and internal developer portals.
No, I just want to add to that one. I think that the interesting thing here is that, like, if you think about it, is like how you take, like, this data, but then like how you create a governance model and automate it. Because in the end of the day, I remember my days as a developer, I needed to switch context every couple of minutes and moving between different tools. So I managed, like, I had an incident, then I had a PR, then I need to move and, like, run the build itself. So to your point, I think that when you give me like one pane of glass, I can see all of that, and it's mean I can move fast, but also can like fix fast, and I can fail fast. And I think that that's part of that kind of thing that we also can think about it if from that point. So in order to make it work, we need to help the developers to live in one place where they get all this notification in the end of the day.
Absolutely, and we'll also show a demo of how it looks like in Port, but of course you can also build it inside your existing IDP, whether it's Backstage or Port or even your own home-built solution. And also demonstrate what Omri mentioned, which we called it the compounding effect. When you bring those metrics into the entire ecosystem of developers, it unlocks new opportunities of measurement that are not possible in a siloed approach. Maybe just to break down a little bit on how do we think about the types of coding tasks that are out there that Gen AI can help with, and how can you correlate it to metrics that demonstrate value. So basically, there are different types of coding assignments. You have like implementation of business logic. And sometimes you write code to fix bugs. You write code to refactor an existing area of the code, and fixing an incident. Even like it's not a coding task, but it's like a code explanation. You want to understand how code is, what does the code is responsible for, what's the business logic of this code. If you need to integrate with it, or you are a new developer that needs to onboard, implementation of tests, and to review the pull requests. And basically, you can also break down the measurement of the tool by looking at each one of those individual tasks, types of coding, and correlate it to metrics like, for example, if you are allowing developers are using Copilot to explain code, and you can see the prompts that are being given, it means that you want to correlate probably with the time to 10 PR, which indicates an onboarding of a new developer, for example. So basically, you need to also look at the different types of coding and correlate it to the relevant metric. It's pretty easy to do it if you label every code that is being accepted by Copilot into the type of Jira ticket that is associated with a pull request. And then you can create a visualization that shows you all the types of coding, if it's related to bugs, incidents, or even business logic as part of your management strategy. So we would love to show you a demo of how this thing can look like inside an internal developer portal. Again, you can take this as an inspiration to any other tool that you're using, so you can actually measure the impact of Copilot or Cursor inside your organization. And also, this is something that you can build into Port, and our customers already build such dashboards and visualizations together. So I'll open up the demo. Okay, so we see here this dashboard. This dashboard is specifically built for the SVP of engineering. So as an SVP of engineering, you can integrate Port into your Gen AI tool. In this case, it's GitHub Copilot, and you can see the correlation between the number of active users. Again, like this is a usage metric, and correlated to other metrics that reflect productivity or stability of your system. So what would be the correlation between the adoption of Copilot into deployment frequency, into MTTR? In addition, you can also see the distribution of where, if it's being used by an IDE, the distribution of IDEs that it's being used. You can also see the Copilot acceptance rate of code generated by Copilot. And you can also see the number of vulnerabilities that are open over time. It can increase or stay or remaining the same or decline over time. So to make sure that you keep track of those health metrics when you adopt the tool. And this is the very same graph that I showed earlier that allows you to understand the time that is being saved for managing and completing Jira tasks within your internal developer portal. In addition to it, you can also start and make a correlation to additional ways to collect data from developers. So you can also see and correlate survey results into the adoption of Gen AI tools. So inside the Port, you can build surveys for developers, so they can basically tell you and share with you how do they feel and what are the friction points that they experience. So here you can see the average satisfaction score for incident management and the average satisfaction for uninterrupted work. And developers can basically fill out a survey that you can create for them, asking them those questions on what is the most takes the most time of your developers. And once they will fill out the survey, they will be reminded about it to complete it. And then you can start and create insights that correlate the data that's coming from surveys into the data that is coming from your measurement of the Copilot usage. So for example, you can see that there is an increase in the total suggestions count. It's correlated to a 30% rise in the deployment frequency, which this is where connecting all the dots starts to become interesting, that you can get answers to different questions around your engineering effectiveness, productivity, and the risk that you expose yourself into. Okay. So just to demonstrate a little bit about how we see the future of combining Gen AI tools with an internal developer portal, and we believe that developer portals will start to get the most out of the of Gen AI coding tools by taking part of agentic workflows and become proactive. So we imagine a world where whenever, for example, in this example of an agentic workflow, whenever there will be an incident for a specific service, for example, PagerDuty can be integrated with the developer portal. Then the developer portal is already connected to all your tools, your CI/CD, your monitoring and observability solutions. It already has the rich context of your lifecycle of development. And what we believe that is going to be the future is to actually have the developer portal generating a prompt that it includes all the context already baked in. This prompt specifically says, open a pull request to fix this incident, which is a parameter that's received from PagerDuty. Here are all the recent changes that might cause it, and bringing all the recent events coming from the software catalog. And it can be thought of the best prompt to create and to give the GitHub Copilot in order to open the best pull request to solve this problem. And so we believe that beyond the measurement, we also want to make sure that we get the most out of the Gen AI tools, and we leverage the price that we pay for it, and eventually, in this case, cutting down MTTR to almost zero, by getting a high quality pull request that already suggests a solution, a remediation for the bug. And making sure that we resolve incidents fast, and making sure that those number of incidents are not increasing over time. So this just to wrap up what we went through, we talked a little bit about the fact that the world is going towards using Gen AI tools as part of the development cycle. We need to measure the positive ROI, but we also need to measure the risk that is entailed, and because the adoption is fast, and we need to make sure that we are not creating a futuristic problem that is going to be exponentially hard to solve. How you can use the internal developer portal to visualize both positive metrics and risk metrics that are coming alongside with the Gen AI. And we also talked a little bit about the future where internal developer portals are starting to take a proactive approach and actually helping integrating with Copilot to use its API to generate pull requests for specific use cases like incident management. So Omri, do you have any final thoughts that you'd like to share today?
I think that it's also like, in the end of the day, and again, like, I'm in the end of the day, like, I'm kind of like, I will be like sold into this kind of a vision. But I think that the biggest advantage when you think about this kind of workflow that you showed, it's literally from my side will be the actual context that coming from different kind of tooling. So that's what happened in the end of the day when you get to this kind of a workflow. You get the ability not just to see what Copilot is doing, but you also can incorporate Copilot and the LLM and the capabilities into other relevant kind of a context. So I think that that's from my side. That's what I'm seeing also, and that's a very important thing. It's not just seeing the tool as an individual siloed thing, but seeing a tool as part of an orchestration of other tools in order to give the context and also to train the tool itself in the end of the day to be better and better to my organization, if you think about it. So that's one of the biggest things that I'm saying.
Amazing. This is definitely a technology that is being widely adopted, and again, we need to realize its value. And as Omri mentioned, it's just the beginning, and this is where we will start to see other tools starting to integrate with Copilot, and it's going to be used not just by developers but also by machines. And this is where it starts to get really interesting on what's the potential value of having such tools communicate with one another. I see that we have a question from the audience. So the question is, how do you plan or not to use the data stored on port to feed the Gen AI context prompt, use it to identify relations between entities. So basically, at Port, we have the concept of automation, which basically means that we can trigger specific events. For example, if there is an incident, in this case, and in the automation, you have full access to all the data that resides inside the catalog itself. So basically, it means that you can query the data from the automation configuration. You can perform JQ in order to construct the best prompt to be given to Copilot. And all the API of relations between entities exist, and you can decide exactly what data you can bring or not. And also, everything stands very high level of granularity in the permissions model, so you can decide which data do you want to expose to the Gen AI tool and which you don't. And this is all configurable by the context of the automation and the catalog of ports. Yeah, and maybe, Omri, there was one more question that I see that you already answered, but do you want to share it with everyone?
Yeah, one of the questions was like, is there a different perspective within this strategy other than just tracking time save? So in the end of the day, like to your point, there are like different kind of like capabilities to try to measure it. But as a business, if you focus on like what is the goal of developers, the goal of developers is to deliver software and features like to be like GA in the end of the day. So another way to see it over time is not just the time itself, but it's like the number of iterations that it takes you to get into production. Because if you think about it, time is a big thing, but when you have a lot of iterations, in the end of the day, you need also to get to a point like that every time somebody needs to write a code, somebody needs to open a PR, somebody needs to review this PR, somebody needs, like you need to initiate the build, and then you have the entire process itself. So if you think about like lowering the number of iteration, also saving an actual human being's time that are focusing on doing like subset of like, of tasks in order to deliver code to production. So that's another kind of a metrics that we saw that a couple of customers looking for, to understand like the number of, if they're reducing the number of like iterations that they need to make to the code before they go GA.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know, Zoe, if you have a perspective, it will be great.
Yeah. No, I completely agree, and I see that there is one more question in the audience. Is if as Port we are planning to use Gen AI to enhance the catalog automatically, like identify potential relations between entities. So for those of you who are not familiar with Port, at Port we have the concept of a software catalog that we can manage a visualization of your lifecycle of development that speaks your language. So basically, in this case, you can see a microservice, and you can see all the associated entities, like where it's currently running, on which environment, what pull requests are open for it, what are the recent deployments occurred, the associated Jira ticket. And the question is about if we can automatically correlate the data, so it will create a visual graph of your lifecycle of development according to your organization, the way that you work as an organization. The answer is yes. This is something that will come, that will be available soon. It's going to be part of a much broader release that we are going to announce. So it's very, very exciting. We are very excited about what we are going to offer around it, and it will be anywhere between March and April. So stay tuned for those of you who are interested to see what we are all going to offer. But it's going to be very, very exciting. And this particular use case will be covered.
And again, especially in that case, like with all the context, it's just like what make it to be like the kind of like the best efficient way in order to drive this kind of like a thing of workflows and motions.
Absolutely. Okay, guys, I see that we covered all the questions and everything that we wanted to talk about today. So really, thank you everyone for joining up this webinar. If you have any questions, you can go into our website. We have a Slack community that is free to join. If you want to discuss with our team, with the port adopters about the topic or about related topics in platform engineering and internal developer portal, we'll be more than happy to chat with you. And thank you so much for joining today. And for those of you who want to share it among other colleagues, it's still recorded, and you can share the recording with internally with your teams. So thank you, Omri, for joining. It was a pleasure, and see you next time.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you.